of Elul, Samech Vav, page Vav.
Right, so I saw that dafke de Kavana HaMushreshes Ba'atzmus say in the Brias Yisrael elements was carried up precisely through the sphere of Malchus, and that brings about the the union of the way the Pinus Birurim to bring, and the Pu'ula of Avedis HaBirurim we saw was to bring the Dover Haki Roche Kaviochom from the Eibishter. In other words, the Mitzutzis that fell, even that they need to be Mispara, and Mispara Alidei, the Nishomes, Lamata, the Avedis HaNishomes, in their Yerida Lamata, Begufim, and they bring in a Yitzia min a Hefer, and they bring the Netzutzis to a Rotzoi, or the Nefesh Abamis, or the Odom, and through that he causes Samali and all the other Netzutzis, Shigodu, Spirit Sakelim, Uteyu, and he causes in them a Rotzoi Elakus. And that's what we saw, the chapter, the Dova HaTachtoin Mizbarer. We saw that the pshat was it's nasa kli, and we saw that was through the union of the rotzen of the Dova HaMishpara, that it itself wants and is in a even of yearning, and rotzoi la'elchus, become, instead of it being in a form of nafila of a yerida and the distance me'oyer upon of his barach. And we saw that the Aveda of the Mavarer is that he causes it to become a Kli, Mamish, to a Kus, what that was the union of its Rotzoi and its Rotzen, Dafke, to be Eila to Shersha and to be Mistabik in the Eibishter, the Moki, the Shersha of all of the Netzutzis, and Dafke Adideze, Nishlema HaKavona HaMushreshes Bi'at. That's the completion, or that's what the perfection the Eibishter's Kavana, and we saw that the Koyach that Malchus had to carry out that function, that's because Malchus, as we saw in our Maimah in Mitzvah Hazais in Pasha Nitzavim, Noetz Tchilos on the Seifa, that the Davki in the lowest of all the spheres, which is Malchus, Davki there is the Hamadin or jammed in the Tchila. And we saw the whole Piyah when we get to the Tchila, what that means, Atmas. Ain't safe to Eibishter, how he is higher than all of the Giluim, all of the Inyonim, which are in any way Ashoirish to the Bria. No, Dafki Atmas ain't safe. We saw that was Tchiloson. And no, it's Tchiloson, B'Seifon. That Inyan of the Tchiloson is Dafki to be found in the Seifon, but that's the union of Malchus. We saw that Dafki Ali Dezeh, Masa Aliyus HaMalchus, that Malchus is then Eile into Atzmus Mamish, V'nimshach Ali Dezeh Gilu HaAtzmus, what that is the Gilu Chodosh Mam. We went into that whole concept of a new light. A light's never been before, an Chodosh, but that's the Gilu of the Eibishter, how he is at Piatzmusay. What is even really higher than the whole concept of Ur, as we pointed out at some length yesterday. So here the intelligent reader and the reader who's medactic Inyanim is Mishera with the question, what does it mean by saying that this Inyan is Bekoya HaMalchus stuff? What do we mean saying that the power of Malchus that causes all of these inyanim? All what Malchus does is that it brings about this inyan. It causes that through the sphere of Malchus you have the Yerida into Elam of Bria Yitzira V'Yah Asiyah, and Mamela you get Sof the descent of divine Ashpur and the Oira is into Elam Hazeh, and in Elam Hazeh Kufa we saw that the Yerida the Netutz is even further Alidei Shvilas HaKelim the Toihu. That all happens through the union from Malchus. What do we mean by saying that Malchus is actually the koyach that causes all these birurim? The union from the birurim are caused through the mensch, through the neshama. That Malchus brings about this whole situation, and then the neshama comes into the world, the neshama being the mensch, for our purposes. And then he's misasik, like we saw, that he busies himself with the union of the world, of the Eilam, and he causes an aliyah. He finds all these fallen netzitzes through his avodah, and he elevates them back to their shoulders, and that causes this tremendous nachas ruach lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What that gufa needs to be understood. What is the pshat? That's a nachas ruach. Why is it, etc. Etc. Why do we say that Dafki in the union from Malchus is the koyach of all these inyanim? Malchus only brings about the field, and the neshamas are the ones who do the trick. The Ike is mitzad the Maila of the Adam, that he causes the whole union to go back. Why do we say no? It's Dafki because in Malchus, because no, it's chilos and b'seifan. Whatever this koyach to return the netzutzes, to cause them to become a kli to elakuz, min ha'hefech el ha'hefech, that's stuck in the koyach of Malchus. We need to understand there seems to be a connection and a essential interrelation between the neshama and how the mensch is a neshama here lamata b'teich gufa in the oilam. And this union that Malchus, that Dafki brings about the whole union of the Aliyas and the Tutsis, and making them into a Kli, but through that there can be Dira as part of the Tachtoinim, that causes the union of the Dira in the Tachtoin. Why is it Dafki through the union of Malchus? And then we say that through that Malchus goes back to a cherish and Atzma, and then through that, this Kiru cause, we need to understand that also. What does it mean that Malchus goes back to its shore? Why is it connected to with the from Sfiras HaMalchus? The mensch, he should go back to his shore, or he should get a tremendous Yashakoyach, or something should occur from the mensch that he achieved all this. And however, he's the one that makes the deal. And why is it all connected to with the union from Sfiras HaMalchus? So we say that Dafki, it goes back into its shoulders. What does that mean? And then why is it that when Malchus returns to its shoulders, then there's a gilui of the Atzmas, and that's the union from Dira B'Taktoinim. And we see that Dira B'Taktoinim is a Erev Chadash. It's like a new light. That's the union of the Dira, the Aino Atzma saying. And you say, what's got to do with the union of Malchus? Why do we give the whole ultimate credit in the whole biur to the union from Malchus? Sfiras HaMalchus down. Sfiras HaMalchus is one of the factors of the Ike poyerless adira. That's Alidei Adam. That's the whole pshat. In Dira B'Tachtoinim, the Eibush wants a Dira B'Tachtoinim Mach. I mean, is there any problem? Who can possibly tell the Eibush what to do? If he wants to make a Dira B'Tachtoinim, he can make a Dira B'Tachtoinim. He make Tachtoinim and put himself in the Tachtoinim. Where is the big trick Padova for the Eibush's point of view? Eladin, if in Dira B'Tachtoinim is Dafki that the mensch makes the Dira B'Tachtoinim. That's the pshat. Dira B'Tachtoinim is that Alidei Ha'odom there becomes this possibility of Dira B'Tachtoinim. Alidei, what he is before, he causes all the Dvarim Shenaflu B'Tachtoinim to have this tremendous desire and this will to become a Kli, and Alidei Zeh, he causes in them the Keli to Atzmas Eitzei. So why is it connected? Dafki with the Indian from Sphirosam. The ultimate view of B'Kol HaDvarim is that Sphirosam Malchus is not Tchilas B'Seifon. The Sphirosam Malchus goes back into its shoulders, and that's Ma'ira. Well, we also need to understand that. What does it mean it goes back to its shoulders, and through that it then comes out the senior from Gili Chodok? How does that work? I'm talking Mamish about Musa Yisbarach. And what does it mean that this causes an arousal and this causes a Gili of an Chodok? Was it the pure? Yeah, B'Kol HaDvarim B'Kol HaDvarim Ha'igla, was it the interrelation between so-called the Mensch and Sfiras HaMalch? V'zeh, we now begin the Biur HaDover. V'zeh she'omer Razal Gimel Keshorim Hei. This is what our sages said, that there are three crowns. Keser Torah, V'keser Kahuna, V'keser Malches. It's missing, which is a very interesting misprint, but it's missing the third one. Keser Torah, Keser Kahuna, Keser Malchus. And then the Mishnah says, Keser Shem Toiv, Oilo Al Gabehe, or Oile Al Gabehe. There's a fourth Keser, which is called the Keser of good name. Keser Shem Toiv, Oile Al Gabehe, and it literally goes up on their backs, or it's Oile. It elevates itself over them. So this is the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, in Perek Daled. What the Baal HaMaimah, the one who said this, is Rabbi Shimon. What Stam Rabbi Shimon, B'Mishnah is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And it comes kilo in the middle of almost nowhere. It comes in the middle of a series of inyanim in the Mishnah. It's not even like a Mishnah all of a time. The Mishnah begins over there by saying that you must be very careful with learning Torah, particularly if you're teaching Torah to others. You have to be very careful. Ki shigegas Talmud, shigegas limud oile zodai. If you have an unwitting mistake in Dinei HaTorah, then that's considered a deliberate error, how to call it a major error. Because if you teach somebody that in, or you yourself understand the Indian, and you bring out a hoirah, an instruction, and then people do according to that, and if it's not right, then there's a big blunder that in the world it was carried out in Yoni, which are not Mafi Kavanosa, yes, is Barak. It doesn't matter whether you meant it or you didn't mean it, whether you were, how to call it, whether you were shoygig or whether you were, that's amazing. It comes to us that an improper thing has happened in the world. That's like as if you deliberately made it doesn't help to come on and say, oh, I didn't really mean that, I really meant something else. But in the meantime, the thing has happened, and there's an unwantable Matthias that people have done kach for kach according to the Torah, and it wasn't right. So this to come on earlier. The fire, you have to be very careful with learning Torah. Ki shigegas Talmud oile zodai, as they state in the Mishnah. And then immediately after that comes along Reb Shimon, and he says, Gimel Kesarim Haim, Kesher Zev, Kesher Zev, and then he says, Kesher Shem Toiv oile al gabehe. Kilo Sholoman, that's the completion of the Mishnah, and starts off another. So it's interesting to be choicha v'doirish. What's the connection between? It's all like in one Mishnah. What's the connection between the first statement of the Mishnah and Rabbi Shimon? But since we see that everybody is sort of very, to use the expression, dahui, they're all sort of deeply in some sort of shlita samoichin, very, very heavy. Without any real signs of any pilots, one way or the other. So we'll just have to go ahead without getting too complicated. Or suffice it to say, what does it mean that there are three crowns? What's the pshat? Not pirush, three crowns. There's the crown of Torah, there's the crown of priesthood, of kahuna, and there's the crown of Malchus, which is kingship, and then there's a fourth crown, which is Keser Shem Tov. What does it mean? Keser Torah or Keser Kahuna? What are the types of Keser? What do we mean? Because a crown is a crown. It's a sign of rulership or kingship in Pashto. Comes on the Bartanura over there in the Mishnah. Bartanura said, what do we mean by saying Keser Kahuna or Keser Malchus? That means the word Keser indicates the possession of Koved. How would you call it? The worthiness of Koved. In other words, honor and respect are due to somebody who has these three inyonim. If somebody who has Torah, you have to give him Koved. Pesukim there, make it a king of Koved, and so on, give him Pesukim to show that somebody who's a fan Torah, he has a lot of Torah, and you have to give him Koved. Even from Malchus, a Kohen, we said also to dinner, you have to be Machalak a Kohen Koved, you have to give him so. Let's call up the Torah first, also to Binyanim. Kohen Gadol, for sure, is a mensch who's moved up, the Kohen and Kol Ha'am. Kahuna is which also demands a certain Koved. And even from Malchus, even from a king, Bavadai, demands one of the inyonim of a king is that he benefits from the inyan from Koved. Glory, honor which is given to him. And then he says, however, what is it inyan from Keser Shem Tov? But the word Shem Tov means a good name. And inyan from good name also brings a person Koved. Also brings him Koved. How does he get that Koved? How do you get a good name? So says the Bartanura, a very interesting thing. He said you get a good name alidei what you do, alidei your deeds. Alidei what you get a good name through what you actually affect the world and other people around. And he said that's the difference between Keser Shem Tov and the other three Kesorim. Well, maybe not Torah, but Keser Kahuna and Keser Malchus, they are things which are mitzad the Etzem Odom. Somebody who's not a Kohen can never have that Koved. That's something in the Etzem makeup of the main. The same with the inyan from a Melech. Not everybody can be a Melech. We see it in this week's Parashah. You have the Parashas HaMelech, that he has to be Davke Aish Miyuchad. He has to be Davke Mikerav Achecha with the ganze. Yeah, with the ganze we see that only it has to be Asher Yivcha Abai Alakah. He's going to be chosen by a very special man. And that's more like in him Gufa. The same with Torah to a certain extent. You can learn a lot. Yeah, you can learn, and you get covered with such a learning. Other than even Shem Tov, Zot the Bartanura, that's a inyan which has got to do directly with what you are in Maisa. You don't get a Shem Tov just from being a big Baal Meichen. You get a Shem Tov from the good things you do. In other words, that you are well known to praise in the eyes of the briois, in the eyes of the people, because of what you do, b'poel mamish in the world. You bring about good things, you get a good name. Those are good names. So therefore, we find that the inyan of a Kohen Gadol, that he doesn't have a good name, that he's still always Kohen Gadol, even though he's still really the Kohen Gadol, but he loses the whole, how to call it, Koved. And I bring it up a man, there's a famous story in the Gemara Masechta Yuma, where there was a Kohen Gadol. You know the whole story when there was a Kohen Gadol. Okay, supposed to know the story. And there was a mice there on which Yom Kippurim, the Kohen Gadol came out to the base of meeting. Everybody was running after him. They had a big a tremendous group of admirers, and the throne were all following him, and all of a sudden Shmaya Vav Talion, they were the two big Chachomim in that day, they appear. Everybody left the Kohen Gadol and all ran over to Shmaya Vav Talion. Said to Rebbe, said, Los Mani Balav and Meloitz Rebbe. See the two people that they are the Rebbe's of that generation. So the Kohen Gadol, he wasn't pleased with that, he wasn't pleased. So the Shmaya Vav Talion, they were B'nai Gerim, they weren't Miyuchosim. They actually, according to one opinion, they came from Sancheir, of course. They were Chalutov of Sancheir. Well, anyway, either they were Gerim Mamish or they were B'nai Gerim, the Shmaya Vav Talion. So he walks over to Shmaya Vav Talion, he pushes his way through the Kohen Gadol, and he says, these people with the Goyim have come over here and they're taking away all the crowd. And they were said it in a not complimentary way. So they said to him, well, it's better the sons of the Goyim who do what Aaron HaKohen does, in other words, they're nice to everybody, than the son of Aaron HaKohen himself that's not doing what Aaron HaKohen says you're supposed to do. That's the way they answered him. So, that sort of, to use the expression, that shut him up at that particular moment. So the Bartanur says, you see from that if he's a Kohen Gadol, but he doesn't do the way Aaron is supposed to do, then he loses the cover. It's the cover by the Bria. And the same he says over there, Talmud Chacham, it could be somebody who knows how to learn, but he said if he's got not such a good name, and certain inyanim, Cholila, then it can blow the fact that he's a Talmud Chacham, because he knows how to learn, but he's a little bit, not such a good name over there, etc. etc. He said, Hashem Toiv, that's which we perfect all these things. If together with your kahuna you've got also Hashem Toiv, then you're a good kesser. You got a good kesser kahuna. If you got a kesser Torah with a kesser Hashem Toiv, then it's a good kesser Torah. So that's what it means. That oila al gabeihen, that the kesser Hashem Toiv is oila al gabeihen, that it goes up above them literally. That it's like an extra kesser that you need, that your kesser should be a good kesser. And if you don't have that kesser, then the ordinary kesser, in inverted commas, the kesser which you have below is not really a kesser. In other words, al gabeyan, that you need that kesser in order to make your ordinary kesser echt good. In inverted commas, ordinary. And here we see the Dova HaNeisaf, that the Indian, the Kesed Kahuna and Kesed Malchus, they got to do with the mensch, mitzat certain Yichusim and Milas that he had. Even Kesed Hashem Toiv, that's something that you could have mamish do for pastors, and you get it through your own Maisa. And that's what Shmaya Vav Talion said, that it could be that they were talking B'nai Kerim, but they got their good name through hard work. Das haben sie gesagt in the Maas, or not in the Gemara Masechet. I don't know, that's the pshat in the Bartanur of Be'er. So that's a very interesting pshat. So he touches Kesem or Kovid. Come on, certain people, and they said that even Kesem means a little bit more than that. It means like, who gets a Kesem? A king. And a king is a person that he has certain rulership, he's got the ability to literally control others and lead them, rule over them. And that's the union of a Kesser Torah, as a Talmud Chacham is supposed to be a man that he leads the people, he shows them, guides them. A Kohen is somebody that he's got rulership, he's got the ability to bring a kapora for people through the Kabbalah. And he's also, like it's brought down in this week's parasha, we see in this week's parasha, when you get to the kahuna, that the koyanim atafki the poiske hadine hatoira, the come to Alisa, ela moke, asher yivcha v'aya lekecha, אל הכהן אשר יהיה ביום יומיים, ודורשת, ויגידו לך, and they will tell you, it's Dvar Hashem. In other words, to a certain extent, the leadership of Philo in Inyan Torah are also alidei the Kohen. And remember, a Kohen is also, how much more so, a king is a Indian for leadership and rulership over the whole country. He's a man that he has in himself leadership and srara. What does it mean that Kesef Shem Tevela Al Kapeihen? A similar Indian, that in order for his leadership to be perfect, he can't just rely on milas that he has below. He's got to be an initial poyo. He's got to be a king, which is Megala. He's right to be Mistarer al Acherim Mikoyat Zeh, that he's also got portion in Yonim Tevim Bezer Oilam HaMaisa Befashta. In other words, that if he might be a very brilliant leader, but if he's got bad inyonim, it's not going to help him. And the same benegir to the kohen, etc., etc. So we see that the Shem Tov Oila Al Gabin is a similar pshat according to that. That the union of Shem Tov is also got to do with inyonim which are outside yichus, they're outside the etzeminion from leadership. They're devoted pushutim, but toicha oila. Of a davkidei mefoer and davkidei mechazik, the keser and the rulership of the person who's supposed to be a ruler. What craving divrei elu liyesh kedivrei elu. The pshat of the with them pshat similar in their whole content. However, when we look at the Nakuda of the word Kesef Shem Tov, Oile Al Gabeihem, then according to that pshat, the Indian, which is obviously a correct pshat, then the Taich Kesef Shem Tov Oile Al Gabeihem, here the Taich, that it goes up on the top of them and it perfects what they are. In other words, for them to be an emissary, a leader of the people, they need to have a Shem Tov, and if they got not good Shem Tov, then that's putting them in their leadership. It's felt the Indian of what we call the Swara, the Srara. Srara means the rulership or leadership over people. Oh, but the etzem bitu of the expression Oila Al Gabeihen, when you think about it, it means literally it goes up on their backs. That's what it means. You would say there's an expression, he crept up on the guy's back. He got up on the fellow. Now, if you creep up on somebody's back, then what happens? You are higher than him. You go up over the top. Oila Al Gabein, the way we've been teaching it, and the Taich today goes up into the same crown, but it makes the crown a stable crown and a proper crown, which means that it adds into the top of the crown, you might. Oila Al Gabein, it's like a further shlemus in the crown, in the keser. As it goes up beyond it, creeps up on the back of these other kesarim. Oila Al Gabeihen, it's kilo like it's metapes. For oila, it goes up and jumps on the back and reaches some higher point than what they are. In other words, the Taich Kesef Shem Tov Oila Al Gabeihen, it's not just like the Bartanuna with the other Mafoshe. What they learn, whatever be that pshat, that the Kesef Shem Tov moisiv in the Kesef, it goes up and it adds into the Kesef. Now the pshat Oila Al Gabeihen, if we look at it carefully, could imply that it's much higher than what the other Kesarim are. That it's a Kesef Bifnei Atzmei, which is almost like you might call Ein Arich, higher than these other three Kesarim, and it's Oile Al Gabeihen, it uses them in order to literally climb and elevate on their backs. It goes up over their backs into a much higher state of its own, which would mean that the if a Kesef Shem Tov is not just another stone in the crown which below it. In other words, it's a further addition and more stability in the crown, but it's like a new madrega, all of its own, which is incomparably higher and more elevated and got in itself a greater pneumius than what they have. And it's killer. You can't even really get to the Kesser Shem Tov unless you go through, or you have these other three Kesarim, and then once you have them, then Hu Oila Alga Behe. Was Lefis there, it's a fragment of Shaila, the Chera Im Kain kommt, I said, the Kesser Shem Tov is a Einen Kloli Kilu B'fnei Atzma. Yeah, so if you're not a Kesser, if you're not a Kohen, how do you have Kesser Kahuna? If you're not a king, how do you have Kesser Malchus? That you should have the all three of them, and then this Kesser Shem Tov will be Oila Alga Behe. Because according to the Pshat of the Bartanura, the Kesser Shem Tov is the shlemus in each individual crown. According to what you got, that's the shlemus in your crown. Now, if I say Oila Alga Behen, at the time it creeps up on the back of all these, it would tend to imply that it's something higher than all three of them together, and it's a shlemus bifnei atzmai. You have those three things, and then you get up to a higher union. If through Kesser Shem Tov you creep up on the back of these other Kesarim, as it were. Well, if he's Ekundois, we would say that it's a union Kloli Va'achmi, which is Shaykh L'Kol Ever Ve'ever. Was Lefis Ever Teishkumen, that the union from Kesser Torah, Kesser Malchus, and Kesser Kahuna, Einyonim in Avodas Hashem, they're not necessarily that you're a Kohen or a Melech or Ke'etzim, because they're specifically. No, it's talking about Kol Echad Ve'echad, but Klal Yisrael, and each and every one of them has got in himself Torah and Malchus and Kahuna. He has to have in himself these three Mila. And he has in himself Nachal Mila, unbelievable Mila of Kesser Shem Tov. So let's see what that is. Let's see how we get to that. That's the line which is going to be taken in the Maimon. We're going to go more with that line. These are Kilu 3 in Yonim Achmi, the Kol Echad Ve'echad. And their Shoresh L'mayla is in Yonim from Sfiras L'mayla. And there's another in it which is Oila Alga Behe, also which has got a Shoresh L'mayla, but Hu Ein Arech, the Gavi Der Shoresh. But we see the feed there. This is another dogma of how Chabad teaches us the Pnimis and the Atzmius of these Inyonim, how they appear by Maimori Chazal, and particularly well known in the Unifan Pirkei. Always, but here in this section there's also Piyurim Nifroim, but Oideis in Maimorim from Pirkei Ovid. Well, we might come to that brief, might mention them briefly when we go in the Maimon, without going into too much arifas at this particular point. So that's what he says now. Mavua b'moki macher. Mavua b'moki macher means some other place in Siddur. The Kesser Malchus, Hainu b'chinas Malchus ta'atzilas, Shenase Kesser va'atik l'brio. In other words, there was a demon from Kesser Malchus. He said that is talking about Lamaila, the Sphira of Malchus. And the Sphira of Malchus, as we pointed out, that's a union Kloli Sabriya. The whole union of the Bria, like we just explained in last night's year, it all comes about from the Sphira of Malchus. So he said, was it even from Kesser Malchus? Why did it touch Kesser Malchus? I always say that, and on the contrary, we know that Ein Melech below Kesser. If a man doesn't have a Kesser, then he's not a king. If there's a doubt the crown, then you can't really have Malchus. So therefore, if we say that this is called Sfilas HaMalchus, then Malchus demands the union of a Kesser. So what is the Kesser of Sfilas HaMalchus? How it is Lamai. He says that the union, what Malchus becomes a Kesser va'atik lebrio. Well, that makes good sense. because we have another cloud that ain't Keser, ain't Melech, believe unless you have a people, you don't really have a king, and you can't really have the Keser doesn't really make any sense unless there's a unless there's a Inyan from a Kabdi. Don't come to is that despite the fact that the Inyan from a Keser is a gewaldige Meile to the one who's mislavish in the Keser, aber so the Inyan from the Keser makes him an elevated entity, legabi things outside himself. The higher what you might call legabi things lower than himself. And that's what I keep. Ein Mela beloy that if you don't have a people with the people that we explained last night, at least with the Kitzur, if not Barichis, is documented as separate entities, managed from the personality of the Mela. And therefore, said the Rebbe, the whole Keser of Malchus, Asphira, is what he becomes a Keser, a king, and his Keser is for the sake of Brio. What Brio is the first of the elements, Hanivroim is the first of the elements, Hanifrodim, the separate elements, Brio Yitzira Bia Ashia. And on the contrary, the whole Ika Chiddush is up to element a Brio. Once you've already done it, then you develop on it as well known. The Yitzira, Asiya are just further tikkunim and further hashlomas in the Inyan of the Yesh. Once you got a Yesh, you just develop it even further. But the big Kiddush is that from Malchus to Atzilus that came about Olam Brio, Yesh Mi, Yesh Mi. What is the Keser from Malchus to Atzilus? The Keser from Malchus to Atzilus, that it becomes a Keser v'atik. Now the word atik is one known as connected with the Inyan Keser, and atik means separate or withdrawn. Like we say that Avraham Avinu is written where he had a tent, and it's written Vayatek Mishom Hehor. He moved his tent from over there toward the mountain. But Vayatek means he moved over. He separated off from there and he went off over there. But that's the Inyan of Atik means separated and moved up. It also means the Inyan from Atik can also mean the idea of old and way back. They had it called primordial, because we say that in Daniel the expression is used, but again to the Eibishter. Who's this?
Rivkin.
Rivkin, yeah, good. Said it. Saves me a telephone call. I wanted to call him up. And here it brings me in. I just get round to it today, but I intended to call him to find out what was the sound. It just falls down from heaven to my table. He wrote in the all the Yonim should be away from Kosev. Keser of Atik. So Atik means the idea of primordial, way back. Therefore the Eibishter, the Eibishter is called Atik Yoimim, he's called in other words, that he's like the primordial of all the days, he's way back prior to all the days. Well, that means the idea of ancient and way back, not for our purposes, not really beginning, as you might say. The idea of way back. So therefore, that implies and emphasizes the concept of separation from dollar, something which are withdrawn, Udolim. And I found the Inyan from Keser, the Malchus is connected with the Inyan of being called Atik Lebrio. That means that when Malchus Tatzilas makes Brio, which Brio is Yesh Mi'ayin, then it does it in a Zah even that it remains B'tachas Av dollar from the thing that it causes to come about. And that's the whole idea of Yesh Mi'ayin, that the ayin does not really become involved in the Yesh. But Panemius he does, because it's only a koyach of the Ein Sof which can make that. But the way it actually happens, the poil is that the Yesh becomes muvdal and separate, and he just says ayin, like everywhere he comes from. Ayin meaning it's not known, doesn't have any hasoga, because the whole idea of Yesh Mi'ayin is that the Mahava is separated and withdrawn from the Mishave. That's the concept of Atik, Keser Atik Labrio. That the Eibishter makes Malchus Datzilas literally become a Keser, and that is through a big Yerida in Malchus. That's what we call Chitanius or Malchus. Now it's already become Shayat to be a Keser Atik Labrio. Yeah, because Atzilus is Etzem Elikus. Bria is Mamish Anira, Ayesh Mi'ayin. It has to be a big further Yerida in Malchus for it to become this Keser Va'atik Bria. But that's what happened. In other words, it becomes a crown and a withdrawal, which we have a primordial power of Helium, Lagabi, the Indian of Bria Yesh Mi'ayin, which is the Indian of Nelam Bria. So we see from that the Indian of Keser, on the one hand, implies the idea of what we said, COVID in the particular, the idea of being drawn and laudated. And here, on the other hand, it implies the concept that there is another entity over which you are ruling, with that idea of Srora, as we saw, that you have this COVID because you are higher and elevated, and you're ruling over something which is much lower than yourself. Therefore, the Keser in Malchus has got kilo, as it were, two inyanim to it. On the one hand, it's Malchus, how it's shot to Atzilus to, even though it's cutaneous, but it is Malchus to Atzilus. But that means the withdrawnness and the Atik and the way back kite and all those inyanim that there is in Malchus. Then there's another inyan which, however, it actually does bring about, it does actually give a ashpah in the form of gilu. But gilu that brings about the inyan of the Bria Yesh the ayin in Mamela, the Keser implies like two inyanim. On the one hand, the laudation of the Keser. On the other hand, Sofkosov, a relation to, albeit an entity of albeit to another entity. Mamela said the Rebbe that's the inyan from Keser Malchus. What Malchus Tatzilas becomes the king literally over the beginning of Elul Shvi'ah. Bria and Mamela of all elements Bria. Bria Yetzirah. That's it. That's Inyan and Keser Malchut. So we see that Keser is a tremendous laudation, but it's a laudation which is over things which are not be'erach, and yet nonetheless hidden in that is a tremendous power to make those things which are be'erach. And that's the Koyach Achmiyat as it is in Malchus, as we'll see as we go along. But Keser Kahuna is, interestingly enough, Keser Kahuna is on a higher madrega begilui advarim than what Malchus is. Even though, as we're going to see, the Dafki Malchus has this tremendous power to bring about the Yesh Mi'ayin. And that's what the idea of Bria is. However, Keser Kahuna, hu bechinas tiferes dezor, shena so Keser Malchus, that it's put down in the Kisvei Arizal, that the Madrega of Tiferes, how it is in the Midas of Atzilus, well, that becomes a Keser to the union of Sphiros HaMalchus. The Keser Toiro, what's the Madrega of Keser Toiro? Hainu B'chinas Tiferes, Di'ema Shanasa Keser Lazor. Even higher. This is how the Tiferes, how it is in Bina. Ema is Bina. Tiferes, how it is in Bina, well, that becomes a Keser to the Midas. To the Midas which are Zor. So it's going step by step. Malchus is a Keser to Yesh Mi'ayin, way out there in Elul Nifrodim, which is Betachas HaRichuk Miller. Next, Keser Kahuna is the Midas, which they're prior to Malchus, and they become a Keser to the union of Malchus. From Midas there comes a Keser through the union of Tiferes of the Midas, that becomes a Keser to Malchus. So we need to understand how does that relate to the Keser that we just described. We said the Malchus got a Keser that's a Keser Avatik Labrio. So therefore we have to say that it's two inyanim, like we said, that the inyan what Zoh becomes a Keser Malchus, or that's how Malchus is Shai PM is to Elul Atzilus still. In other words, it's still a Gilui in the world of Atzilus. In order for it to be what it really is, then you have to have this Kesser which comes from the middle. And then there's a further Indian of Malchus goes out into which Chitanias, way out into Elam HaBriya, and over there it becomes a Kesser to Elam HaBriya. In other words, the difference is Malchus out still shy, Mamish to Atzilus, and the Indian from Malchus out becomes a Mokia Mamish Biyah, as it were, in its own, you read of a Chitanias, Gabi how it is in Atzilus. That's what we have to say. Because Kuntais Lafi said that Malchus has already got two stories. Malchus got a Kesser that gets from Tiferes, of Zohar, and then it's got another Kesser with it gets when it goes over into Mahavad the Elamas, Bria Yitzira Vyasiya. So we need to know what's the difference between those in Yonim. Mahu Hebdil Bein Zer Lazer. That's what we could call maybe Pnimius HaMalchus Betwenius HaMalchus. And then he says there's another one, but that's how the Indian from Zohar also has a Kesser. Over that comes from Bina, and that's called Tiferes Di'ema, and that's a Kesser Zohar. The Alter brings us down in Lakuti Torah, Kamim Keimes, as is well known, the famous poem about Tiferes in Pasha Kedoshim, in Vayikra, in Lakuti Torah, and also in the same general area in Pasha Tazriya, the Alter in the if the gave Masifta Darakia to Gemara, the Alter brings down a man with that Dibra Amas, he also talks about this in even Tiferes Ta'im and so what is the Indian then of these Kesorim that we say that first we go with an order? First of all, Aimo makes a Kesser to the Midas. And then we see that the Midas, they make a Kesser to Malchus. And then we see that Malchus is visited with another Kesser to become, the Atik Labrio, to become like the source of the creation, Yesh Me'ayin into Brio. What are these three Inyonim? So what are they? So, what it boils down to is, it's well known that Kesser is brought in Chassidus. That Kesser is the Indian from Rotza. The concept of Kesser is indicatory of the Indian of will, of Rotza. And so what is the connection between Rotza and the idea of a Kesser? Because all the other koichos are governed by the will. All the other koichos are governed by the will. And depending on your will, that's how all your Inyonim function. Doesn't matter whether it be your mind, your midas, your action, your machshava, your dibba, your mouth, anything. You name it, then Rotza's got it. In other words, whatever you want, that's what you are. In other words, if there's a Rotzen, it'll function. That's a famous statement of the Gemara that if a man learns where he's got a Rotzen to learn, then that's where he has Atzlacha.
It's a big statement.
Yeah.
That's a big statement.
Yeah.
Doesn't really work.
Huh?
It doesn't really seem to work that way.
It doesn't work.
If a person wants to, they have a ratzon to be, I want to do, a person wants to have a ratzon, I want to fight the nefesh Bahamas, learn, be a chassid.
No, what it means is, in the Chanami. But what it means, Mamon Shaliba Chofetz, means that in the union of learning itself, thinks that he has a will to learn. In other words, it's connected also to the concept of time, to some extent. Where he has a gishmak in those in Yonim, then that's where he'll be much clearer. Or in the place, some are forcing touch, in the place, mamish in the physical place, in the yeshiva, where he has a will to learn, that's where he'll be much clearer. And everybody knows what everybody's will around here is. They should learn Davki. Tom Chetzmiu. Davki. Tom Chetzmiu. Shenikur Tzadei Zetam. However, suffice it to say that the union of Kesses will, rot. And therefore we see that's what connects a king with his people, is his will to be. The crown of the king is indicative of his rot. Because a king is a very withdrawn person. That's what he is by definition. He's too high for everybody. You gotta be Megala in him a will that he wants to do the whole thing. Yeah. Once you be Megala that will, then he'll really get moving. It's a very deep will, but it's got to be brought out. So the Inifan Kesser is like the revelation of that will that he wants to be a ruler. He causes in himself the gilui of this desire to be a ruler. That's why ruler should be connected with will. Because if there's no will, it's not going to work. He's not going to want to become involved in all this tremendous kofeti called running a country. But unfortunately, we are visited with people who have the will, but they have the hatred of the whole idea of what it means. Run a country for you, a hatred, sheba hatred. Sheba hatred. Osman, it comes to that the Inyan van Rotzen is like the gilui of the king which brings him over and makes him rule over people. Otherwise he's just withdrawn. And that's the Inyan of a Kesser. So a Kesser is a gilui of a will that certain things in a lower state should be, that the profundity of the will, which is the koach atzmi of the reiter, should come down and affect lower Inyan. So what Chassidus says is that nothing happens unless you have a will. Shum davar lo koreh without some form of a will. You've got now moichin, you've got a brain, you had chokhmah, then you had bina. What's the whole tachlis is to get the midah. Unless you want the midah to be, your moichin are never going to produce it. Because moichin and midas are two different things over here. They're two completely different environments. A moichin, by its very essence, doesn't want to have to do with midas. Because it's not the ganze from midah. Now the same thing, midas into malchus. Malchus means expression, dibur. The pnimis of malchus is dibur. The chitzonis over his mind. But the pnimis of malchus is becoming involved in the Inyan, at least al chaparim with the koyches pnimim yoter. That's what is the beginning of your involvement. So in order to have that, you've got to have a will. Your midas, you've got to want to push that. You've got to want through your midas. You've got to have a love and a fear and all those, and you need to do things the way they should really be done. But if you don't have a will, then you can have all the midas in the world and nothing will really happen. There won't come any dibur, and how much more so there won't be any mount. And so that's what he means, that mitiferes the aimor nase keser lezor, that from the bina, the tiferes in bina, in other words, the high midah in tiferes, which is called in midas, which is called tiferes, well, that produces the will to cause that your bina will go down into your midah. So now, why is it connected with tiferes? What's Davki tiferes? Because tiferes is one known as what's called the kavayim tzoi, and tiferes is a union between chesed and gvura. But that union comes about mitzad a gilui of the Ein Sof, a very powerful gilui. And this leads us to a very big concept which I don't really have time to go into at the moment. There's a very big concept which we discuss a lot in the Torah at the Baal Shem Tov. They are very bekitzer and so on. In Mavine Hadov, in the Baal Shem Tov, etc. What he calls about the yichud of Tiferes and Malchus, the union between Tiferes and Malchus. In other words, that if you want that your understanding should go down and cause midas, it's going to be the best of your understanding. It's going to be the crown of your understanding. It's going to be the best that your understanding can produce. Because otherwise, just some understanding and knowing the Indian and even be able to talk about it, that doesn't necessarily produce midah. What produces midah is when the pnimis and the emes of the understanding that wants to go down. Well, then you get midah. And you've got to have the tiferes of the midah. You've got to have the best. And when you have the best, you have the kavayim tzoi. Now the kavayim tzoi is the atzmas for our purposes. What is a kli to that? Malchus, Malchus can take that kav hatifer. And if the other midas like nahi, eitzach, and huid, if they become involved, then you only get is like little portions of it here and there. Now nature huid have got other miles. I'm not going into that right now. Each one's got its own mile. Well, in order for it to be, for things mamish to get moving, you've got to have an unlimited power come out into your malchus, and that's tiferes, because tiferes takes opposites and unites them together, because it's the koach of the Ein Sei. Now remember that koach of Ein Sei, that goes down into malchus, right? And that makes a keser in malchus. In other words, it causes the ability to express, becomes a kingly ability, becomes a ruling, like one of the Pirushim we brought down in the Gimel Kesarim, that they're ruling power. From the Tiferes of Eima becomes a Keser, a Pirush, that the real Emes Rotzen, that there be midas, expresses itself through Malchus, of how they call it, of Bina. Really, it's coming from where? It's coming from Tiferes. It's coming from the best and from the most unlimited part, and that becomes a Keser. That makes the crown and the will push the Malchus of Bina, which is the Gilui, into the midah. Once again, we see that the power of the king is really from a much higher in him, which sets him motivated. That makes him really get cracking. In other words, from the Tiferes inside him, that's what pushes him to actually go down into the midah. The same, the Moichin they are tremendous, and they got tremendous powers, but it's got to be pushed by something unlimited, and that comes into the power of expression of the Bina, which is the Malchus of Bina. That's called Tavuna, by the way, we had that once, and that is ruled by the Tiferes of Eima, and that becomes a Keser L'Zor. And a similar thing, from Zor into Malchus, the same thing, that if you want that the midas should produce you speech, and you should start cooking in and to reveal it to the rest of the world, then the midas have got to say, oh yes, we want to go out into the world, because they'll be happy to stay the way they are. The midas also, they're like cocking around. A person will say to you, oh yes, I really love people, and I really do, and I really love, I do something for the other person, help, do something in the world, you killing me, leave me alone, maybe somebody else can do it. And from the midas there should come, Malchus, at least it should start beginning to reveal itself. Then you got to have a special keser that comes in once again for Tiferet. That makes the ruling power of the midas affect into Malchus. But what is that? That's dibur, that's speech, oisia. What is really from speak? Have you ever heard the expression? How do they say? Red chain. Have you ever heard that one? He speaks very nicely. But that means he knows how to talk, but nothing very much comes out of it. In other words, the talking, the pneumius of mouth is only the beginning. And to want to go from that into Maisa, that you got to have another rotzen, you got to have another will, another pushing of a will, and that's got to come from deep inside the Indian from mouth. Well, that's the Eivish himself. There's this case of article brio that's got to go out into, and that's with the Tiferes. The Eivish to Malchus, the Teichatzmus, he gives the Quran into Malchus to go over into Mamish Maisa, which is Yesh Mi'ai. There, the Kesef Atik Brio is really the highest Kesef, in a way. In that regard, because it's pushing everything out into, but it's a Kesef. It's going to be a new Rotzen and a powerful Rotzen. It's going to come from a very high source, and that comes from the Eibshter Tov. Tchilos and Ber. But we're going to still have to see how's the mensch fitted now. We haven't got to that yet. We still have to bear in mind our question from the beginning of the time. Plenty of time for that. That's the three Kesorim. Kesef Malch is a very, very powerful and high Kesef. Nonetheless, says over, he said, Gimel Kesorim Halolu, Hainu B'klin Zaksorim, Deseidahi, Staun Shiliyaz. He said, these three Kesefs, despite the great elevation that there is, and despite the Kesef that there is in Malchus, which Mamish becomes, how do you call it? Kesef Atik Brio, like we pointed out. All those, he said, are the Kesorim of Seida Yishtav Shaleh. Sof, they've all got to do with things which go through a state of the spirit. You go from Eima into Midas, then from Midas into Malchus, and I feel from Malchus out into Maaseh. It's also a certain Seder which is connected with the. So in other words, the Emes Atzmus hasn't yet come into Gilui. Even in that case of particular Bria, to make Bria Yesh Mi'ayin, as Mamish come the Emes from Atzmus. It's a very high Madrege in Yonim Nailib, but it's not Mamish Atzmus. It's really hard to say that here. Now why are they called Makifim? Because they're Rotzen, they're Gilui Rotzen. Rotzen is the union of Makif. In order for there to be that Gilui, of the will to bring about a lower and Ein Arek Madrege, you got to have a union for Rotzen. And Rotzen is one known as a Makif. It's a all-enveloping power. So therefore, each time you got to move from one thing to another, there has to be a power of Rotzen, a big Makif, which pushes it all into action, as you might say. However, he said these are Makifim, which are going to shaykh to say they they're Lamaila say these Staushas, because they're Makifim, but they're Makifim which are going to shaykh to Ishtaush. Ubeshur Shom Be'erein Seif, Hainu Am Shocha V'gilui de Erein Seif. He said that's all in Yonim, which are the divine influence and divine light, how it is in the form of Am Shocha V'gilui. It's already come out from the Atzmus, it's already in the form of derivation and revelation. And it's just got different levels. This is a Kesef for this, this is a Kesef for that. But it's all in a form of revelation already from the Atzmus for the sake of being Nimshach downwards into effect of the whole Seder of Ishtaushel. That's what we call a Makif HaKarov. There's what's called a Makif HaKorev and a Makif HaRoch. We're going to see that the Emes of Makif is what's called a Makif HaRoch. A Makif HaKarov means that it's a Makif, but it's got a certain shaykh. That's what we see. That you have all sorts of wills, all sorts of, how do you call it, retainers, you want to have midas, you want to have this, you want to understand, you want to bring the understanding to midas, hopefully that's what you want. And you want to do all sorts of good tezachen, but that's all, not the emeser rotten. That's rotten, that's got yachas to the, in Yonim, how they're already the building of the nefesh. Of it. There's what's called a Rotzen Poshul, a Rotzen Atzmi inside the Yid, but that's the Etzem Rotzen. To be shot to the Rotzen or the Eibishter, BMS, Lamaila Mikol Medinas Vahak, Boilers are not Biyachas Lazy Union, but it's purely for the sake of it. Not because you want to understand, because you want Midas, because you want. It's all holy thing, it's a great thing, very powerful. Over, how do you call it? Ain't oid. Holy one is Levade. That's another type of it. That's Makif HaRachot, that's called the Yemser Makif, and that doesn't have to do with the Taushel. We're going to see about that now as we go along. And that's connected with this idea of Kes Hashem Tui. That's called Kes Hashem Tui. The Gila and say, so he says, Yad Shurish Harishoin Bekinas Klolos Ha'ir the Erin Seish Lifnei Achimto. As we go back to the first Shurish of these Gimel Kesarim, then he said you come into the oil of the Eibishter, how he's already been nimshak min ha'atzma. In other words, it's oil ain't say, not atzma say. It's already the oil which went out of the atzma. So Ein Hanami very high in on him of it's all in a oil which has already been, as it were, miskala from him. It's not Mami said the atzma, you know, the famous Chabadzik in that we want atzma. So now that we put in the word now, the Chabad always said over that, we want that. Omnam, Kesher Hashem, Teiv. I know, Gam came to the Malchus, Uki Yadua. Yeah, Kesher Hashem Teiv is also the Indian from Malchus. Shem, who Pchinas Malchus, we explained that Mitzvah becomes Shem. Achim is Pchinas Malchus. כמו שהיא משלבשת בביאה לוויה בירורים. He said, that even Kes Hashem Tov, well, that's higher than all these Kesser. The Kesser of Malchus to Atik Lubis to bring about the world. But the even Kes Hashem Tov is that we're going to change the world. We're going to make them into something that was, we're going to make them a kli to deal with Tatoin and Mamin. That's going to go back into the very etzim of the rots of the Eibishter. It's going to get into the very pinkel of a yid. And he wants to make mamash and deal with Betatoinim. I remember I was once sitting by a Fabrengen, a choshev of Mishnagid was by the Fabrengen, Reb Nachum Goldschmidt, or the Zayda from the Rabbi Goldschmidt was there. He would go amazing person. And he was by the Fabrengen, he'd been given by the Fabrengen, and he turns to this Mishnagid and he says, give a cook. He said, the Rebbe doesn't talk, he doesn't reckon with you, he doesn't even talk to you. He doesn't even talk to you. He said, you're just a bull rag. He said, you're just a bolt. Your whole thing is to make dira b'tatoinim. He said, yeah, Mr. The Eibishter wants the dira b'tatoinim, which he's in, and he wants it should be a tachton for who he is, because he wants to put himself inside the tachton. You're the one that's supposed to do it. Nobody talks with you per se. Your whole thing is only to make dira b'tatoinim. You're just a Russian portion. Last is, you have nothing to do for yourself in this world. Yes. So he said, he said to me in Yiddish, there's no change, you know. There's no rest. You pay in, but you don't get any change. You don't get anything for yourself. You don't understand. He said, where's the rest? It's a very good question. In Yiddish, that means, where's the change? Where's your bit for yourself? It's the poor egg. Nothing for yourself. So he said, there's nothing for yourself. He said, once you reach that, then the Eibishter helps you that what you really need, that's what you get. If you really need something, the Eibishter to give, because you will hear, he'll give you what you really need. Well, there was bad secrets for the Eibishter Hogan, Mr. Talstein, of the best name. So you guys are not in the mood for these sort of high-level Siddish quips. Did you get it? You got it?
It's good to be a bolt. It's the whole...
Yeah, that's the whole thing, just being a bolt. You're not really here for yourself. You only make a deal with the top team. I know what to that. You got to realize, you don't really want yourself. No, you want what he wants. Kiss a kahuna and tell you what.